Isabella lived in a beautiful apartment in the middle of the city. A large painting of the New York skyline at night was one of her most prized possessions. One evening, as the sun went down and turned golden, giving her apartment a nice glow, Isabella poured herself a glass of champagne and sat back in her armchair to enjoy it. Her eyes focused on the painting, and she sighed. Her green eyes were full of an emotion that had her held captive for years. Lily, her best friend, walked into the room and said to her, "Isabella, that look is back. What are you thinking?" Isabella spoke with a passionate tone. "Lily, my deepest wish has always been to find a guy who can give me everything I want. A friend who will take me away from my everyday life and into a world of elegance and glory." Lily's eyebrows went up, and her worry was clear. "But Isabella, aren't you looking for love too? A bond that is more important than money?" With a champagne glass in hand, Isabella responded, "Love can wait, Lily." Her eyes seemed to be far away as she said this. "At the moment, I want a life of pleasure." Isabella didn't just sit around and daydream. She had an extensive strategy that had nothing to do with how beautiful she was. Because she had big goals, she often went to fancy high society parties where the richest and most powerful people in the city met and socialized. Her closet wasn't just full of fancy dresses and sparkly jewelry. Each dress and piece of jewelry was carefully picked to make her the most interesting person in the room. One night, she got closer to another guest, Victoria, at a fancy party in an old house. Victoria was known only for her beauty, but also for how easy it was for her to draw eligible bachelors. Isabella was so interested and excited that she had to ask Victoria for help. At that fancy dinner, where lamps were shining and rich people were talking, Isabella met a rich man named Richard. Isabella was very interested in him because he had grey hair, which meant he had seen a lot, and he had acted like he knew important things. She didn't wait around. She walked up to Richard, who was carrying a glass of bubbly drink, with all the confidence that her background had given her. "Richard," she said, her voice sticking out in the room full of people talking, "I have to say that you're the most interesting person here." Richard took her hand when she offered it. His smile showed he knew a lot, and his eyes looked like they'd seen a lot. "And you, Isabella," he said in a deep voice that made her feel something. "You're like a breath of fresh air in this crowd. Why are you here this evening?" Isabella moved closer to him, almost touching his ear with her lips, as she looked right into his eyes. "I heard this is where really interesting people meet. I want my life to be full of excitement and experiences, not just the same boring things." Richard's eyes got big and bright, as if he was now really interested. "Well, Isabella, you've got my attention for sure." Isabella and Richard's love went like a well-choreographed dance, with each step made to bring them closer together. Isabella told stories about hard times and problems, making it seem like she was in distress and needed help. Richard liked how she looked and was interested in what she had to say, so he was happy to be her knight in shining armor. Isabella told him more about her made-up past while they were eating a cozy dinner at a fancy restaurant. As she talked, her voice shook with emotion, and her eyes looked like they were trying to hold back tears. "Richard," she said, her voice shaking, "you make me feel so safe. I feel like I finally found someone who understands me and can help me when things get hard." As Isabella and Richard's relationship got stronger, Isabella pushed for a wedding right away. She was always focused on her big goal. She thought that becoming Richard's wife and living a life of wealth would be like a dream come true. One day, they walked through a yard full of flowers. The colors of the flowers matched how strongly they felt for each other. Isabella smiled happily and turned to Richard. Her eyes showed how much she wanted him. "Richard, my dear," she said, her voice full of energy and excitement. "Why are we waiting? Let's get it on record. Let's tie the knot." Richard, caught up in her joy and deeply in love, gave her an affectionate, happy nod. "Isabella," he said with a smile, "you're right. We should do it. Let's make our love public. and get past anything that stands in our way. Their fast-paced relationship was going well, but Isabella didn't know that Richard was hiding things. Those secrets would soon come out and make their once perfect love story a lot less happy. The day of their wedding came, and it was a rush of style and wealth. They got married in a fancy hall with sparkling lamps and flowers. It looked like Isabella's dreams were coming true. She had nice things and could get whatever she wanted. Even though she looked happy, Isabella was planning something. The first few weeks of their marriage felt like a vacation, because they went to cool places all over the world. They drank champagne on a balcony in the French Riviera, had romantic dinners in a restaurant in Venice, and danced under the stars in Greece. Isabella's dream was coming true, but she wanted more. The nights were magic in Venice. They walked hand in hand through the narrow streets, with the old lights cast interesting shadows on the walls. As they ate gelato at a cute shop, Isabella laughed, and each taste was better than the last. But Isabella always felt she needed more, even when things were going well. One night, when they were on a private boat near Ibiza, watching a beautiful sunset, Isabella seemed far away. She said quietly to Richard, "I wonder when we'll have a big house with a view of the city." Still amazed by the beauty of the sunset, Richard looked at her with love. "My dear Isabella, we have a lot of time," he said. He didn't know that Isabella was already feeling unhappy, and this would cause problems later on. As time went on, issues began to show in their relationship. Isabella got bored with her fancy life and didn't like it anymore. She started to fight with Richard over little things. She needed more, and she needed it now. After a big party one night, Isabella came home to their fancy loft apartment in a very bad mood. "This isn't good enough, Richard. I'm sick of waiting for things that should already be mine. You said you'd give me everything, but all you've done is talk." Richard was shocked by how angry she got so quickly and let out a deep sigh. He thought that nice things would make her happy, but she always wanted more. "Isabella, let's not argue. We don't need anything else." But she didn't stop. "I won't be happy until I have everything, and I won't wait any longer." What she said hung there, making things tense. Both of them were aware that their once happy marriage was in trouble. Isabella felt like they were locked up in their fancy apartment, which used to be a sign of their love and success. She felt that she was stuck, and the expensive things that used to make her happy made her feel even worse. Richard, who was usually a good listener, didn't know what to do. Things kept getting worse for them. Their relationship got worse every day, and Isabella's constant need for more started to ruin not only their marriage, but also who they were as people. They didn't know that the decision that they had made during this hard time would affect their lives in ways they couldn't even imagine. The stress between Isabella and Richard had been building up like water in a pot that was about to boil over. Over the years, what started out as a happy marriage turned into fights about what each person wanted. Isabella wanted money very much and thought that she would be able to get it. She had enough, so she asked for a divorce. This big move would end their difficult marriage and give her what she thought was hers. Their home was dark and uncomfortable on a stormy night. That showed how bad things were between them. Isabella locked Richard on the floor where they used to be happy. Isabella sounded angry. It was really tense as she told him what she wanted, her eyes showing how determined she was. "Richard," she said in a sharp voice, "I want to go. I want the money that is rightfully mine, and I want it now." Richard knew this was going to happen, and he looked sad when he looked into her eyes. As he nodded, his face showed how heavy his heart was. He knew that their love was almost gone. "If that's really what you want, Isabella," he said in a sad voice, "we'll do it." Isabella didn't know that Richard had been preparing for this though. He gave Isabella some papers to sign. As the divorce date got near, he gave her a smile and told her that his team of experienced lawyers would take care of all the details of the divorce so that it would go easily. Isabella was always careful, so when she looked at the papers, she had doubts. Even with Richard, she wasn't going to sign anything without knowing what it is. She asked him, "You think I'll sign these without reading them?" With an odd tone. "What's really going on, Richard?" Richard kept his friendly attitude while keeping cool and calm. When he said, "There's nothing hidden, my dear. couldn't help but smile. Just something normal to make sure that everything goes well. We can both move forward if you sign. Isabella finally agreed to sign the divorce papers because she was excited about a fresh start. Richard's words made her feel like he had things under control, so she trusted him without questioning what he was trying to do. Isabella looked forward to her new life with money and freedom. As the weeks turned into months, she dreamed of a life where their broken marriage wouldn't be a problem and she could reach her financial goals. But she didn't know that Richard, the man she had misjudged, was working on his own big plan. Isabella grew more and more restless as time went on. She started to realize that the man who seemed so calm and understanding wasn't what he seemed to be. Soon, Richard's plan would fail, and Isabella would have to question not only her decisions, but also everything she thought she knew about the man she used to be married to. Weeks turned into months that never ended, and every day Isabella was reminded of the hopes she had lost. Her joy had turned into worry, which made her feel like she was always hungry. She thought that the money that she thought she deserved would come easily, like a big waterfall. Instead, her fancy apartment was filled with an odd silence. On a cold night, Isabella's fear and impatience got to be too much for her. She chose to speak to a lawyer, Sarah, who had been a big help to her during this hard time. During the long divorce process, Sarah had fought for Isabella's rights. Isabella put her arm around her friend and looked very upset. "Sarah," she said slowly, "it's been too long. By now I should have gotten my fair share. Why is it taking so long?" Sarah looked worried when she talked to Richard's lawyer about this. She was generally calm, but when she said, "Isabella, I'm worried too," she looked tense. "This wait is weird. I'll figure out what's going on, I promise." As the days went by, Isabella's worries grew, but now she couldn't stop moving around in bed. She couldn't get rid of the feeling that something was very wrong. Sarah threw herself into the case, and even her typical calm couldn't hide how serious things were. Her desk was full of papers, and she often stayed up late reading about marriages, business deals, and money. There should have been clear proof that Richard's money should have gone to Isabella, but instead, there were studies that were hard to understand and didn't seem to lead anywhere. After a long day of work, Sarah called Isabella late one night and sounded worried. "Isabella," she said in a shaky voice, "things don't seem to make sense. I can't find any proof that you and Richard were married. It's as if it didn't happen." When Isabella heard this, she was very scared. She didn't think it was true. "That can't be true, Sarah," she said with a shaking voice. "I have proof that we got married. I was there." Sarah sounded worried and looked worried at the same time. "Isabella, I need to see that certificate. There's something wrong here." Isabella was angry and hurt, but she knew she needed to talk to Richard. She wanted answers right away to the questions she had. Their big living room, where they used to be happy, was now where they'd have to talk. This place that showed how much they loved each other was now where they argued. Isabella stared right at Richard with a look of fire in her eyes. "What's going on here, Richard? Where is the money? Where is the money I was going to get?" Richard kept his cool and gave her a piece of paper. "Isabella, you were manipulated. This," he said, showing her a piece of paper. "It's a fake marriage certificate." Isabella felt like her whole world was falling apart. She was shaking as she looked at the paper and said, "I can't believe it. How? You gave me this." Richard didn't change the way he looked, and he stayed cold. "I gave you a fake certificate. After my lawyers looked into it, it looked like we were never really married." When Isabella found out what was going on, she was hurt and angry at the same time. Things had changed, and the person who had been fooling everyone else was now fooled. Richard came across as strong, but not mean. "Isabella, I'm not as mean as you may think. But you didn't realize that what you did would lead to bad things, no matter what. You wanted money, and now you have to deal with what happens next." Richard told her to leave the apartment that used to be hers after what he said. Isabella no longer had her big dreams, so all she had left were the pieces of her broken hopes. The penthouse felt really empty, just like how she felt inside. Isabella was alone in a city that seemed full of good things before. The streets that used to sound like they were talking about money and nice things were now empty, and her sad footsteps made it sound like she was really down. Every step reminded her of how fast things had changed. Isabella had to face the hard truth about what she had done before. She had no one to help her and nowhere to go. She didn't think about what would happen when she went after a life with lots of things and money. Because of what she had done, she was now in a bad place. Isabella had tried so hard to live a life of luxury that she had nothing left, not even happiness. Because of the hard truth she had to face, her dreams were ruined, and she had a terrible reputation. Isabella looked back at her path when she was alone with her thoughts. She had given up real love and being true to herself in order to get money. She had failed because of her lies. One night, in a dark cafe, Isabella told an old friend she hadn't seen in a long time how she felt. "Sophia, I lost everything. I forgot what was important because I wanted money so much." Sophia knew because she had always been smart. She gave a nice nod. "Isabella, sometimes we have to lose everything in order to find out who we are." Richard's life changed in a strange way after Isabella left. He was left all alone in a big house which felt very empty. When Isabella left, he saw a void in his life that hadn't been seen before. Richard started to think about things he had done as time went on. He realized that caring only about looking young and wanting money had hurt him in ways he hadn't thought of before. He felt that his life was empty. He had a moment of realization. As Richard got older, he decided to do the right thing. He stopped caring so much about money and started helping the world that had helped him get rich. After starting charities, gave money to organizations he cared about, and taught young people how to run their own businesses. His new way of life showed him that he could be rich in a different way, by living a life that meant something and helping other people. So Richard's story kept going. But now it was about the good things he did, instead of just how much money he had.